Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of the podcast. Now, some of you made it through the first episode, and I'm really proud of you. That was me just going on and on and on for 20, 30 minutes. And for those of you who made it through all the way through that, well, wow. Can't believe you did it. I don't think I could. I basically just spoke for 30 minutes with the microphone on and left it at that and just threw it on the web. I think it shows. There was no editing involved. But anyways, I'm proud of you for making it through that. Anyways, this is going to be about the same, so I'm really, really sorry about that. I do have some special guests lined up for the future. It is just difficult trying to get the time for us to meet and do this. I live on the other side of the planet from everybody I know. I live in Japan. A lot of the people I want to bring on the show live in Canada or United States. And just finding the time where we can both get online and have an uninterrupted 30 minutes or an hour to talk about something is a little more difficult than I thought. But I do plan on doing it. It's going to be a lot of fun. But for now, I'm just going to talk about webcomic bullshit. And I know that a lot of people do webcomics nowadays. When I started in 1997, it's just a small group of friends. And, well, now there's thousands and thousands of people doing it. And that's a good thing. It's a bad thing, too. The good thing is that a lot of people are sharing their voices. That's a great thing. The bad thing is that there are a lot of abandoned webcomics out there just because, people lives move on. Maybe the comic didn't go as well as they wanted. Maybe it wasn't successful as they needed it to be or anything like that. But there's just a lot of abandoned work out there. And it's kind of sad because, well, I've abandoned some comics too. So sometimes it's just hard to continue. And I'm lucky because I found a couple titles that really work for me. And I just enjoy doing enough that I don't need a lot of success on the internet to continue doing it. Anyways, today I'd like to talk about what you need to be in order to be a successful webcomic artist. Now, before anybody asks, am I a successful webcomic artist? Let's not talk about that. There are certainly much more successful webcomic artists. There are people who are doing this full time as their jobs and stuff like that. I still have a 9 to 5 I have to do. And this is just something I do on the train and things in my free time and stuff like that. However, just because this isn't my full-time gig doesn't mean I have to think about all the things I need to do in order to be a webcomic artist. When I started, webcomic artists like draw something and throw it on a web page, and that's all I needed to do. Because, well, there were only only a handful of webcomics out there. But now there's thousands and thousands of webcomics out there, and you have to work a little bit harder and know a lot more jobs in order to get your webcomic out there. So, these are the 13 jobs you have to be able to do in order to be a successful webcomic artist. Now, having said that, I don't know anybody who's good at all 13. I'm certainly not. And I noticed that the jobs I'm not good at really hurt what I do. They really make it difficult for me to get my comic out there. And some of these jobs are easier, some jobs are really, really hard, but these are the 13 jobs that you really need to be able to do to be successful in webcomic creation today. Let's look at the first one. The first one is you have to be a creator. What that means is you have to have an idea. A lot of people start off with a big idea. They think of all the characters, they think of all the plots, they think of all the intricacies, they think of an ending. They have everything all planned before they even put a pencil to paper. Some people can do that. I cannot. For me, if I plan big, it gets too big for me to do. And then I get overwhelmed before I even begin. The best comics I've worked on were the comics I didn't have the big idea. And I started small and I made the world bigger. Those comics work for me. Now, they may not work for you, but I found that having a small idea keeps things manageable. And then building on that idea in the comic, while I'm drawing the comic, makes it more interesting for me. A good example is that it was with Dead Sisters. What I imagined the comic to be in the beginning is definitely not how it ended up to be. How it is now. And I've just been building ideas and ideas and ideas on top of that. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for me to draw. It's a lot of fun for me to create. The characters are fun to put in these situations. And it's because the idea started off small, but it got bigger as the characters grew. That worked for me. Probably if you're thinking of a complete story, it's not going to work so easily for you. But, having the idea is definitely a big part of it. Your idea also has to be fairly unique enough. Now, when I started in webcomics, everybody wanted to do college roommate webcomics. Dozens upon dozens of college webcomic. And another was gaming. Oh God, two gamers sitting in a couch talking shit to each other. Lots of comics on that. There's a lot of the same comics at the beginning. And, well, some of those comics made it big. Certainly. But, the more unique comics out there, the ones that really did its own thing, those are the ones that are remembered. And I think those are the ones that have the biggest effect. So having an idea is important. It also has to be more or less unique. So that means having some knowledge of what's out there already, so that you're not just doing something someone else is doing and you're finding out that they're doing it better than you, which is a difficult pill to swallow. So having an idea, having it sustainable, and I say don't dream big unless you are sure you can do it all. That's a tough one. Now, the second job is plotter. It's a little bit different from having an idea. Idea is more of world building and stuff like that. Creating your characters and making them alive. But plotter is having the stories which the characters go through. And that's a skill. You got to be able to tell a story. And the elements of the story have to connect to each other throughout the story. So if there are things that are going to be important later on, you have to introduce them early so that when those elements come up later, it seems natural, like they've already in the story. They don't come out of nowhere. It's those kinds of skills that you really need. It's a difficult skill, actually, I think, but it's definitely an important one. If you don't have a good story in mind, people won't want to read your comic. Number 3 is the writer. The writer's a little different. The writer builds upon the plotter and makes the characters say their things, have their own characterization, do different things to show their characterization, move the plot forward, exposition, all that sort of thing. The writer has to do that. The writer has to be able to use words well. I'm not such a great writer, and I think it shows. A lot of the stuff that my characters say is a little bit on the awkward side, and but it's something I really do have to work on. The fourth job is the penciler. Actually, jobs 4, 5, and 6 are what I call the illustrator trio. The writer, the penciler, the inker. Sorry, not the writer. Yeah. The penciler, the inker, and the colorist. Jobs 4, 5, and 6. They're the illustrator trio. And they all illustrate, but they all have very, very specific jobs they need to do. Very specific skills, and they're very different skills. A penciler has to make the layouts. They have to move the story. They have to take what the writer writes and put into panels so that the reader can understand what's going on through the images. That means the exposition between, or the links between panels is clear. It's really hard to say what this is about, but obviously, if you are interested in penciling and knowing how panels relate to each other, Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud is really the best book for this. Just read it. It's a great book. You'll learn so much about it. All the things you thought were obvious about how panels are linked and how they psychologically move the reader forward. It's all in there. It's a great read. But the penciler not only knows how, penciler also has to know how to draw. So he has to know human anatomy, has to know angles and perspective and all these wonderful things. The penciler's job, I think, is really the hardest. Without good penciling, it's going to be a difficult comic book to read. A good penciler will save good writing. A good penciler will save bad writing, actually. People buy comic books just because someone drew it. So, a good penciler will save a comic. I think really the penciler is one of the most important jobs. But anyways, they put everything in pencil. Why just pencil? Why don't they just go ahead and ink? Because, you need that eraser. I guess now with digital ink, maybe you can get around that. But no, I still do like an underlayer where I just, throw my layouts down before I start to go in good just to see if they work. Interesting enough, now that we've got AI, do we need pencilers, inkers, and colorists anymore? And obviously, I think yes. AI to me it's a crapshoot. You tell the computer to draw something, and you're lucky if it comes out the way you want, or even close. With a penciler, you've got this image in your head, you're putting it down on paper, and you're thinking about how the panels relate and stuff like that. AI just cannot do that. At least not do it well. Maybe at one point AI will be able to, but I can't say that's right now. So any discussion of AI, using AI images, I really don't know much about that. But I think that we still need pencilers, inkers, and colorists for the time being. The fifth job is inker. And the inker is the one who takes the pencils and makes them come alive. Makes them good. The inker adds depth to the drawing. Make sure you know that the characters are above the background instead of part of it. And makes the pencils come bolder. It really finalizes the drawing aspect of the art. It is really necessary. Can you become an inker without knowing art? Or like things like anatomy and stuff like that? I think it's difficult. You have to know some of the inking basics and stuff like that. There's a really good series called the DC Guides that have a different book on each one of these things, like writer, penciling, inking, and stuff like that. And the inking was definitely a good read. Another job is 6, colorist. And oh my God, I think this is one of the hardest jobs. Now, there's some people that just go in with fill. Yeah, that does the trick. Okay, yeah, maybe it's not so hard if you're just doing that. But holy crap, there's a good colors make a difference. They add lighting. They know about how to, they know how to make the art pop. Make it feel like it's living. Make it feel like it's alive. And this is one of my worst traits. I really don't know much about coloring. I've read tutorials, I've studied. It's just difficult for me. I really need to learn more about coloring. And there are different ways of doing it. I think I do it a very difficult way. There are, you should just start with the flats and you build on top of the flats by adding shading and lighting and stuff like that. And, it's an art. Colors is an art. If you can color and you can do it really well, your comic will stand out. So I think it's one of the most important jobs. It is definitely well worth studying. Like I say, this one's just a little bit beyond me. I do so many cheats with coloring so that I don't have to do it. One of the biggest coloring tricks I use was like for depression comics. I use 4 different shades of gray. That's all. And I use those 4 different shades of gray through the entire comic. All the depression comics is made with a Copic marker T1, T2, T3, T4. Those 4 markers. I started with number 1 with that, and I still do it today with those 4 markers. And by keeping it simple, it keeps my coloring simple. It's not great, but it does the job that I'm willing to put into the comic. I actually use the same process for Dead Sisters. Almost all of Dead Sisters is using 4 different shades. And then I use a color layer on top to change it to what I need. It's not the best way. It doesn't have the greatest impact, but God, I'd love to be able to understand coloring a lot better. I know it would make my comics so much better if I understood it. Job number 7, the letterer. The letterer comes by with the script from the writer and puts it on the art. Now, the letterer's job is difficult if the penciler doesn't do their job. And the penciler's job is to make sure that there is enough space in the panel for the letterer to go in and drop their words on it. And the penciler in me is often an asshole, and he just doesn't do that. He just lets he just wants to fill the entire panel because empty spaces really freak him out. So the letterer comes in and he has to draw over, he has to write over stuff, and he isn't very happy. And one way to do it is that the penciler should be thinking about the letter balloons, and he should be. But I tend to draw everything first, and then last thing I do is the letterer. Why? Because the writer in me hasn't really finalized the dialogue. And so after I've drawn everything, then the writer comes in and says, okay, let's see what dialogue fits. It's a very backwards thing to do, but it's hard for me to make a script and then draw. I don't know why. It's always been like that. I'm a very spontaneous person, and I like having the spontaneity. Okay, I need the dialogue right now, and let's write it. And so the writer and letter get together there and make the dialogue on the spot. Not a good thing to do. Don't do it unless you can't do it any other way. That's not the proper way of doing it. But anyways, this is what I do. Now, some people use fonts. I use the font for Sexy Losers because that's what I've been doing since almost the beginning. But I prefer handwriting. It just feels like I'm signing my own work all the time. Yeah, using my hand to draw the pictures and stuff like that. But, when I'm writing, it's like almost a signature, It is really personal when I use my own handwriting in a comic, and I like to do that. Job number 8 is the editor. The editor's got to come along at different points and just say, hey, that sucks. This is a really, really important thing to do. The editor's going to come along and say, that beautiful art you did, well, it's not going to work. The reader's not going to be able to follow it. That dialogue that you wrote that took you like 20 minutes to think of, well, cut it out. It sucks. It's too wordy. You can't love your own stuff enough to not get rid of it. Sometimes I draw something and I'll just like, okay, that's a piece of shit, or that isn't working, and I have to get rid of it. The webcomic artist, everything is in service of the story. If it doesn't serve the story, it's got to be cut. You can't like, oh, this is, look at the face. I drew some really great eyes. It doesn't matter. Get rid of it if it doesn't work for the story. An editor's got to be good enough to do that. And you have to have the discipline in yourself to be able to make those decisions. They're really hard decisions to make, but I've gotten good at it. I'm okay with saying, okay, I need to redo this panel. It's not working. Okay, now we've gone through actual like making the comic and stuff like that. Okay, now you've got the image. Now what? We're only in job 8. How can there possibly be 5 more jobs? Well, there are. Now you have to do something with a comic, and there's more jobs, more diverse skills that you need in order to be a successful webcomic artist. Number 9, marketer. The marketer's job is to promote your comic and make all that wonderful merchandise and stuff like that, so you can make a little bit of money from your webcomic. And this is another place where I really, really suck. I cannot promote my own work. I just can't. I feel ashamed when I do. Making merchandise, I feel the same way. You have to be a bit bold. You have to really believe in your work and believe in yourself in order to be a really good marketer. There are lots of tools and stuff like that out there if you want to make merchandise and try to make a little money off your comic and try to get it out there and let people know. You have to spend money to make your comic known, and you have to spend time in order to market your comic and make all that merchandise. And I've made merchandise as almost no payoff whatsoever. I make very, very little from any merchandise I make. I put books together. I made, I went on like Redbubble and made shit. Barely sells. The merchandising and stuff like that only works if you got a huge following, and I just don't. Actually, I probably have a huge following for Sexy Losers. That shit is hard to market. So, yeah, there's a huge payoff, if you can spend a little bit of time marketing your work, and it is really hard. Again, this is one of the things I really struggle with. I wish I could do it better, but it's necessary. 10, web designer. Okay, so you have the webcomic. Where are you going to put it? And I use some WordPress sites. A lot. Well, with WordPress, it's all self-hosted, of course. You can use WordPress.com, but I really don't suggest that you stay on it for too long. It really stops you from doing anything. It really limits your ability to grow. So I have a self-hosted website, and I think for Sexy Losers, it's a Genesis website that I modified it's got some plugins and stuff like that that I made. Same with Depression Comics, and yeah, it's really hard to find a layout that works and stuff like that. You got to do a lot of tweaking just to find a WordPress site that that is good for the comic. I still struggle with this, but it's necessary if you want to have your work on its own home, where you're not dependent on any, on any other company, because they will try to monetize your work for you. They'll throw in ads and stuff like that, and they'll be the one making the money for you. I did that with Sexy Losers for about 10 years. And then I realized that other people were making much more money on the comic, and I was making nothing on it. That was a really big realization for me. And you really should consider getting your own space, if just for peace of mind of having a home base for your own artwork. There are places you can show off your artwork, but you need your own website. Just trust me on this. You need your own .com or whatever. You just need that. When you do it, you have to think about how you're presenting the comic on computers, on mobile devices, how you can have a smooth reading experience. How does it showcase your work? Does it destroy your... Some WordPress themes will destroy your work on the way. It takes a lot of work with number 10, web designer. And yeah, it's a skill you need. Another one is 11, is social media manager. You need an online presence, and you need to gain visibility, and you need to attract readers. You have to manage multiple social media accounts. You can't use just one. You can't use just Instagram. You can't use just X Twitter. You can't just use one. You have to use a lot of it, and you have to post almost all the time. You have to create engaging content, interact with followers, and promote your comic across these different platforms. And every platform has its specific rules. Instagram has a whole bunch of wacky rules in order to get seen. For example, if you just post your work as it is, it's not going to get seen unless you make a movie or something out of it and post that. Those get more traction. On X, Twitter, if you put your URL in the same post as your comic, your post will not be seen. Unless you got a blue check, your posts are going to be buried. They're not going to be seen. Every social media platform has its own weird shit you got to deal with, and it's getting worse and worse every year. Holy crap. But it's something you got to do. The next one, number 12, community builder. And is you want to build a community around your webcomic. And it's essential if you want to have a long-term successful comic, so that you can engage your readers and you can feel like you're a real human being. Chat. You can host events or contests. You can make people feel like a group. And I've got a Discord channel for that, and of course the Patreons as well. And they keep me connected. I feel responsible to the people in those groups because I interact with them daily, and it's good for me. You don't want to do this completely in isolation. You need people to talk to you about it. You need people to be enthusiastic and say a couple good words to you. Building communities help. A long time ago, almost every webcomic had its message board and stuff like that, and Sexy Losers is no different. Had like the row, and I still do the row on Discord. I really enjoy Discord, actually. I don't post as much as I should, my bad, but I really enjoy Discord, and I enjoy talking to people in it. It's fun. It makes me feel like my work is actually being read by people. That's an important feeling as a webcomic artist. You don't want to be throwing your comic out into the internet void and not getting a response. So the community helps. The business manager, and this is the last one, it's number 13. You are essentially running your own business when you're doing a webcomic. And that means you got to budget, you got to handle finances, you got to realize what's worth paying for, what's not. For example, I host my own site, so I have to pay the person who pay the provider and stuff like that. I have some subscriptions to certain programs I use, like Clip Studio Pro and Notion, and you have to manage all that. You got to make sure that you're making enough to handle all that. I'm against advertisements on my website. I'm totally against it. So managing my finances is especially challenging because of that. I used to have ads, but I got ads for things like Scientology and stuff like that, and I really did not like the quality ads I was getting. So I figured I'd just say no ads. Hopefully I get enough support through Patreon and through Kohi that I would never need to do advertising in my site. And thankfully, it's worked. And I can have a site as popular as Sexy Losers and not need a single ad. I'm really happy about that. I really hate advertisements. Advertisements, they weigh down your site. They add shitty cookies and tracking cookies to your readers. And yeah, advertisement is just gross. So if I can provide my comics on a site with no advertisements, I'm very, very happy. So these 13 skills are all the skills that you need to become a webcomic artist. As I said, I suck at a number of these. I think everybody sucks at a certain number of these. But I think they're all important. And even if I'm not great at some of these, I can at least be good at enough of these to be able to do webcomics. Anyways, once more, just like last time, you listened to me go on for about 30 minutes about boring garbage, and you've done it again. Well done. I'm really, really proud of you. The last podcast was about 27 or 28 minutes of me just going on, and this one is now 32 minutes and 34 seconds of me going on and on. Well done. This isn't how every podcast is going to be. I will have some special guests, as I said. They're just difficult to get the time together, but we are going to have them. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be reunited with some people who have basically inspired me from the beginning, like Tang Ho and Jackie Lesnick, and I'm really excited to have them on because even before I was doing webcomics, I saw their work. They inspired me. Now they're my friends. I am so happy to be still talking to them in my life, and I want to share them with you. Anyways, again, it's been a blast, and I hope you I don't know if you learned anything from this, but I hope it was interesting to think about all the things that you need to do just to draw that comic. A lot of people think you just got a piece of paper and pen, draw something, take a picture of it, scan it, and throw it on the web, and that's it. There's a lot more to it. And, I hope that if you're thinking about building your webcomic, that you think about these 13 different jobs and be good at it. Or at least find the ones that you need work on and try to boost up your skills in that. Anyways, this is Clay Jonathan. Wonderful talking to you, and I'm going to see you in 2 weeks. All right, take care, everybody. See you.